Hello, welcome to my Module 5 vlog. The main question on the vlog says, how will you go about building a classroom community where all students are seen, heard, and valued? What steps do you take to ensure that the building community, and what impact does this have on student performance in the classroom? I feel like in my personal experience, thinking back to whenever I was a student, for me, it didn't take much for me to feel valued in the classroom. I feel like I did really well academically, so that wasn't a problem per se, but I really enjoyed the consistency and the scheduling of school, because at home, I never knew what was going to happen. And then as far as a teacher building community, I like to do all kinds of things to try and make sure all of my students are valued and included. So this might be activities like asking different students about their cultures. One example of this in the classroom, I'm not sure what we were talking about to get on the subject, but I was talking about how I've noticed in Hispanic cultures, lots of people have like two last names. And so I was talking to my kids. I was like, am I right? I was like, do you get like one last name from mom, one last name from dad, and then you have both of them in yours? And they were talking about it. And I have very large Hispanic population. And on Ash Wednesday, they came to school with their ashes, and so I was asking about that, and I kind of let them explain and share their own personal cultures with the class. And just so everyone feels comfortable. And another big thing is, regardless of if my kids have behavior issues or different levels of understanding and all of that, I try to have very, very high expectations for everyone in my class. And now that may look different from one person to the next, but I want them to know that I expect their best effort, and I let them know if it's not their best effort. Not rudely, but in a kindly, like, we both know you can do better than this. And I try to support my kids however I can. I teach fourth grade, so most of, if they're doing things independently, writing and things like that, they mostly need help with spelling. Even if they have it right, they're just not very confident. So, I'm like, sound it out. If you can't figure it out, come see me. And so I'll write it on a sticky note, like how to correctly spell the word, and give it to them. And I try to walk around, make sure we're all on the same wavelength, everyone knows what we're doing. And as far as my classroom rules and things like that, I have my golden rules. So with my golden rules, those are my non-negotiables. It just has to be that way. And as far as the rest of my rules, I'm like, here's what I think. Do you guys think this is reasonable? Why or why not? Like, a big thing that always causes controversy, there we go. Sorry about that. Is why I should or should not allow gum in the classroom. So, we talk about it, and it's pretty much, it's almost like a reward. I hold my kids accountable for upholding my expectations, essentially. And then I'm like, if you can hit my golden rules, and we can do that every day, we can start chewing gum in the classroom, and there won't be a problem as long as it's not stuck on the bottom of my desks. And so far I haven't had that issue, because they have a respect for me, and they don't want to disobey my rules, because most teachers don't allow the gum in the classroom. And then expanding the possibilities, I'm looking at the brochure. That's the document that is in this assignment. But it says connect with people and places that broaden my world. So I try, as far as doing that, if kids don't understand something, like I teach history, so there's a lot of stuff. So back to segregation, integration, slavery, all of those types of things, I have to explain, like, this is what they thought was normal. Like, obviously it's much, much different now, and I try to explain the full scope of things so that they understand how far we've came, or the things that are different, because there's a lot of crazy stuff that happened in history that it made sense to them then, but it does not make sense at all whatsoever now. And a big goal of mine is really just to make my kids feel comfortable, whether that just be them having someone to talk to about things going on at home. Like, for me, I'm pretty open when it comes to my childhood situation. I'm not just like giving all the gory details to my students, but I just want the ones who are in similar situations to know that if they need a listening ear or someone that can relate to them or kind of inspiration, like, hey, it gets better. I want them to know, like, hey, you know, I come from a home where my parents were not great growing up, and look at me now. So whatever you're going through, I understand on some level. And I feel like that helps them to feel more comfortable. And I try to include every person. And I know this one might also be like another topic of controversy. Whenever it comes to my EL kids, they are very, it depends on the range. There's all different ranges of my EL kids, but some of them, they came to me speaking barely any English, but I tried my best to not like single them out and come have another student translate whatever they're trying to say to me. I tried to like, you know, hand signals, pictures, and get to it on my own, because to me it feels like I'm showing that effort and they feel a lot more comfortable with me. And honestly, with this group, I wasn't sure if I had that connection and that impact, but as you know, my dad passed and I was out of school for an entire week, and my kids were so happy to see me. They were so glad I was back, and it was a little chaotic coming back because we had state testing right then and there, but I'm kind of rambling now, so I'm sorry about that. But the way they reacted to me coming back shows that they feel the love. It's reciprocated, the love that I pour in, because I know I teach history, so it's very boring. So I try to do things that are fun for them. We do lots of cut and pastes and like hands-on. Like we made probably my favorite and the most chaotic activity we did. We recreated Alabama region maps, and we made our own salt dough, and it was a whole thing. But they really seemed to enjoy that, and so that was right at the beginning of the year. So I try with at least every standard to find one thing that is hands-on that they can do. And I kind of learned that several of my kids work better by themselves. Several of them work better in groups. And so most of the time I let them choose, like, hey, you can work with your group. I do choose the groups, but I'm like, you can work with your group or a partner from your group, or you can work on your own. It's up to you. And I kind of scan the room and make sure everyone's on the same page. And then I try, because some of my kids are really shy, which that's how it is. I try to like read their faces to see like, is this person getting it? And I like to do entrance tickets and exit slips as well, just so I'm like, you know, maybe if they're too shy to just come to me and ask, I'll be like, I think I need to take these people back for a small group so we can get on the same wavelength. And as far as UDL, I feel like that's honestly the best way to support learners, because it's like the hierarchy of needs. It's essentially, if their most basic needs are not being met, how are they going to be able to focus on the academic content that I'm shoveling? Or if they had a rough night at home and they need some support, or maybe something was happening and they didn't get enough sleep, I try to be considerate that they're people at the end of the day, and they're just little people, like they're kids, you know? So I try to give grace, but I don't give so much grace where my students just think they can do whatever. I try my very best to support them and challenge them and push them, but also sometimes that support is giving them a break because we don't know what's going on. And going back to the textbook, as far as the highs and lows situation in chapter 5, let's see what page. I'm on page 95. I think that is a really good morning meeting type of situation that I would love. So they can share something, their highs or their lows, and the rest of the students can listen or give their support. And so it helps to build that community. So it's not just me trying to support them, but it's almost teaching them to support each other. So I really, really enjoyed reading about that. What I do really for my morning meeting is me and my homeroom, we play Wordle. They love it, and it's a fun group collaboration and brainstorming, and it kind of helps wake their brains up before the day gets started, and they really, really enjoy it. So I like that. And I'm getting a little bit off topic. I'm sorry. I need to go back to the question. So as far as a reflection on this course, I feel like I've learned a lot of things, and I had honestly never heard of UDL up until this class, and it's very, to me, similar to differentiation, but it takes it to a whole new level because it takes it beyond the modalities of learning. And then this it also says pay attention to my classroom and in the halls and my school and the PTO and PTA. I feel like culture and socioeconomic status definitely plays a big role into that. At my school, most of the families are pretty low income. So whenever we do something at the school, we usually have a pretty big turnout because that's the one thing they can do, because it's, typically free, and it makes my heart happy and breaks my heart a little bit at the same time, because if we have like our Christmas program, if we offer food for the families, we are packed all night long, because some people are at that status where it's harder for them. And as far as the PTO, if there's a language barrier, I see less of those parents interacting in that situation. We do have a large Hispanic population, and in my homeroom, most of the parents speak fluently in English. Some of them don't even know Spanish. But then I also have some kids whose parents only speak Spanish, and we do send out translated materials and things like that, but a lot of it is still harder for them to follow. Just like thinking about the kid sitting out for lunch I cannot find what I was just reading that talked about that. Maybe it was in the textbook. I'm so sorry. But in one of the materials that we've read this week, it was talking about how there were Hispanic students that were just simply not eating lunch, and come to find out the teacher talked to them, and it was because all the papers sent home were so complex and really hard for them to follow, so it made it hard for the parents to understand, even when the kids tried to explain it to them, because I'm sure they also didn't fully understand. And so that's an aspect to look at, and depending on the culture, there's different things and different challenges that kids face because of that. Like, for instance, I know several teachers and administrators who just brush off special education students, and don't expect anything out of them. So a lot of the time, these kids have the mentality like, they don't think I'm going to do it anyway. Like, let me just goof off and get my 60 and move on. But me personally, if their IEP lets them be in my class, I expect their best effort, even if that is something highly accommodated. Based on knowing them and reading their IEP and seeing them, I know that I can push them to hit their full potential. And some people are just like, no, just let them play. And I'm like, absolutely not, because they can do this. And a lot of it is just they're so used to just getting the grade and not having to do any work, which to me is crazy. And based on that, they have different expectations. And then some of the people that are from the community, like, they're not immigrants, they may do great in school, but they may have a low family income, and that shuts them out from some of the opportunities. And then we have kids from different cultures that are immigrants, so they're learning the language. Their parents may not have enough money to get them in to the programs and things that they need, or the ability to sit and read and sign them up for the things that they need to be signed up for. And then as far as other challenges, we've got all of the stuff with ICE and all that. And depending on if their family members have been detained and stuff like that, that's going to play a big role in what they're doing at school, because if that happened to me, my mind would be a million miles away. But I try to consider all of these factors that I've just rambled on about, and I try my best to be fair and equitable. And I tell my students too, advocate for yourself. If you think I'm in the wrong, like if I've given you a consequence for something and you would like to explain yourself, that's 100% fine. Like, just say, hey, Ms. Garrett, can we talk? And then, lay it on me. And as long as you're respectful, I'll listen and I'll be respectful and we'll figure it out, because I'll make sure that they know I don't think I'm perfect either, and that it's okay for them to make mistakes, and sometimes I'm going to make mistakes too.